This Impact Wrestling review was brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Try it, and the next time the Knockouts champion gives a title shot to a woman who hasn't been the champion yet, it won't be viewed as a bad thing. Well, hot diggity damn, TNA. That's more like it. I'll admit, I was not crazy about the show for the last couple weeks, not at all. But I don't know if they flipped a switch or changed writers or what, but I thought this Impact was actually pretty damn good. So many positive things happened this week, like the product got a shot of adrenaline all of a sudden. And not a moment too soon, Jesus Christ. Something I was very impressed with here was how this show was able to balance talking and action very well. Now, this is something that TNA constantly struggles with, but this week I thought they got it just right. And with an episode that had 3 pretty significant talking segments, that's not easy to pull off, because this could so easily have started to drag. But they used the talking to set up the action, it didn't feel like it was being shoehorned in or done for no reason, and the result was easily one of the most engaging shows TNA has produced this year. Another big plus is that TNA took something that I was on the fence about initially, this new MVP faction, and turned it into something that I'm now genuinely interested in. We got a more thorough explanation for the MVP Kenny King-Bobby Lashley alliance. I don't know if it was 100% seamless. It was probably a little more convoluted than it needed to be, but I'm with you so far. I was satisfied. And what's refreshing about this is, while it is another top heel faction, which TNA does ad nauseum, there are no non-wrestlers involved this time. There are no untalented members of this group. You could argue Bobby Lashley, and I won't argue against that, but he does have some merits as long as he doesn't talk too much. And the lineup is small. You got the spokesman, the muscle, and the loudmouth show-off, and that's it. So each guy stands out and has a purpose. So right there, you're avoiding several of the big pitfalls that usually drag these factions down when TNA puts them together what seems like every few months. Thank you. We're still in familiar territory here, but maybe, just maybe, they've learned from past mistakes this time. Then immediately the dominoes start to fall. The Wolves come out. They're pissed off about what MVP's doing, so they start fighting. Davey Richards gets speared off the stage through a table, which was awesome. Later on, Eddie Edwards comes out looking for payback. He has this terrific fight with Kenny King, and he gets taken out. And what was great about that was that Kenny King took him out by himself, without any help. I mean, yeah, Eddie was roughed up earlier, but that didn't matter. Kenny took care of business all on his own. So you establish him as a heel with some guts. No chicken shit BS for the King of the Night. If they want to do the Wolves versus King and Lashley at Slammiversary, I'm definitely cool with that. It might not be the beer money feud I was hoping for, but it's still a hell of a step up from the last quote-unquote feud the Wolves had, thank God. Yes! And then in the second straight talking segment in a row, we finally get the payoff for Austin Aries being off TV for so damn long. He's back in an important role now. And yes, it does seem like they're flip-flopping Aries between face and heel a hell of a lot lately, but there was a good reason for it this time. Aries screwed MVP over in the Lethal Lockdown build-up, which ironically now paints Aries as a face of all things. And this set up EY Lashley and Aries MVP for later perfectly. So this was 2 talking segments back-to-back, albeit with action included, which went about 25 minutes total, I think. Sounds excessive on paper, and they probably could have condensed these into one segment, but we were finally getting the payoffs for a lot of things they've been setting up for the last few months, as well as witnessing the establishing of the new status quo that has the greatest man that ever lived and the Wolves in big important spots. Fan-fucking-tastic! You surround Eric Young with those guys, and suddenly the babyface side of things is looking a hell of a lot better.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Something else this episode did really well was intersecting different storylines without things getting cluttered. Dixie Carter shows up. Didn't MVP have her thrown out the last time she was there? How does she keep getting into the building?
This is unbelievable. This doesn't make any sense.
She gets in MVP's face just long enough to acknowledge the issues between them, and then Bully Ray comes out. And then this effortlessly transitions into Bully Ray MVP. Because even though Bully Ray is feuding with Dixie Carter and EC3, he also has a problem with MVP now, which again makes perfect sense because he was the one responsible for MVP's team winning Lethal Lockdown. So all of a sudden, Dixie and MVP now have a common enemy. And you can kind of see where this is all going now. I imagine Dixie and MVP will team up eventually and their respective groups will join forces and it'll turn into another Immortal type of situation. And the possibility of that has me nervous because there's potential here for TNA to fall back into some really bad habits if that is the direction they take this. But I can at least appreciate how this was all set up. Because even if they did take kind of a long time to get to this point, the story seems to have been uncharacteristically well crafted, and the payoff here was actually pretty exciting. Good stuff. Really nice storytelling so far with this Magnus Bram angle. I don't know if the last man standing stipulation in the match with Willow was really necessary, but I'm liking this a lot. And even though it started with them losing a handicap match to Willow, somehow it's still working for me because that's kind of the point. That Magnus has taken these embarrassing losses, which is why Bram wants him to get more vicious. And Magnus is starting to come around on that, starting to see Bram's side of things, but he's not there yet. But when he does get there, I think it's going to put Magnus's character in a much better place. And a lot of this is due to how well Bram is playing his part here. There's something I'm noticing about him. He does subtle crazy very well. You get the sense that this guy is dangerously unhinged, like there's a lot of intensity just beneath the surface, but he sells that without going over the top with it like so many other people would. My favorite moment here was the pre-tape where Magnus punched him, knocked him down, busted him open, and Bram just grinned and laughed with blood in his mouth like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's a great character trait. That's something that makes you think that this guy is a little deranged, he's dangerous, and he's probably not someone you should fuck with. This is a really compelling storyline and a really interesting new character they've got here. Don't drop the ball on this, TNA. There was one thing I really had a problem with this week. Sadly, it was the knockouts again. Angelina has an open challenge for her title, but only for knockouts who have not been the champion yet, thus eliminating every single knockout on the active roster except Brittany. Now, ordinarily, I'd like this, but of course, this is portrayed as a bad thing, as heel tactics, as Angelina ducking Galen Madison and taking the easy way out.
Oh, what a bunch of bull.
TNA, get this through your heads. Former Knockouts champions being prevented from getting a title shot so a new girl can get one instead is a good thing. A very, very good thing. It fucking baffles me that TNA cannot seem to understand what a huge problem it is that so many of the current Knockouts have been the champion. They've essentially rendered the Knockouts title worthless and they don't even realize it.
You people are fools!
But regardless of how it happened, Brittany gets some screen time, a match, and a title shot. Thank you. The match itself is pretty decent, but then they get to the stupid-ass finish. Brittany has the match won, but once again, Stifler is distracted by Velvet Sky on the ring apron like a horny 12-year-old, which leads to Angelina winning. It's kind of like the Earl Hebner-Madison Rayne storyline. Actually, it is the Earl Hebner-Madison Rayne storyline. Here's my question. Since it's obvious that Stifler is not impartial, why the hell does he keep refereeing the beautiful people's matches? You telling me there's no one backstage, not one person in management that has a problem with this? Didn't they get a female referee for the knockouts to prevent exactly this sort of thing from happening? What happened to that? It's bad enough that you're recycling the played-out Gail Kim Beautiful People feud, TNA. Are you really that devoid of new ideas for the knockouts that you have to recycle referee storylines too? Come on, guys.
Urge to kill rising.
Aside from that, I really did like this Impact a lot. They definitely reached overload with MVP's faction, but for 1 week I think that was justified because they kind of needed to push this group hard in order to build up some kind of momentum before Slammiversary, which is not far off. Mission accomplished, I think, because now I'm at least somewhat interested in what happens at the pay-per-view. That's also why I gave them a temporary pass on the NWO tactics, although that could get old really quickly. We're finally getting the payoff for a bunch of things that they were building up to for the last few months. And even though a lot of this does look awfully familiar, with TNA basically just falling back on the same heel stable / corrupt authority figure stuff they've been doing for years, the new status quo that they're putting in place with this angle is not a bad one. So I'm willing to give them some leeway here, at least for now.